Yeah, this is the 24th because I was born in the 1800s, and so this is okay. Well, I'm glad you're here. I've got too many pictures to show you, and so I'm going to have to talk fast and get with it here. Okay, obviously you can see where Chile is. It's three time zones. This might be up a little loud, huh? All right. Okay. Three time zones earlier than we are, which is good if you don't like jet lag. It's not too far, and it is an amazing country. This country has 29 active volcanoes, and plenty that are inactive that could go off at any time. I assume they have earthquakes all the time. All the major cities have been damaged from it. They have the highest volcano in the world. Pikes Peak is 14,000 feet high, which is a tall peak. They've got 10 peaks over 22,000. It's just a sliver of mountain range and coast, and it's got an interesting history and fantastic wildlife. So here we go. There's a close-up of it, and you're probably wondering, what's it really? How does it really compare to the United States? If you could pick this nation up with your bare hands and turn it sideways and drop it on the United States, well, you'd hurt a lot of people, and so don't do that. But if you did, it would look like this. So it's really slinky, and it's hard to see all of Chile. Even in 40 days, it took us a lot, 4,000 kilometers to see approximately 2/3 of it. When you take a look at this map here, you see it's a satellite map. You can see the glaciers, obviously, in white there, and that is Chile's ace in the hole because this is, it comes free. You don't have to pump it up out of the ground like we do here for irrigation. It just comes, the air comes over here across the Pacific, and it freezes as it goes over the Andes. And so that's a big deal for them, right? And those really high peaks are up here too. And all these actually are in some trouble in terms of melting, right? And all that rain over centuries, that just dumps its load on Chile, has created a natural environment that's unbelievably luxurious in terms of topsoil and everything, because as things die and come back to life, topsoil builds up, as you can see in this picture here. Someone was trying to punch in a road, and look at how deep that topsoil is in central Chile. Darwin came here because even in his day, the story of the wildlife in Chile was so amazing that he wanted to study here. He went to the Galapagos too, that's what he's famous for, but in fact, he spent more time in Chile than any other nation. The sign says, in the footsteps of Darwin, and he studied here and all over Chile. All that rain does a lot of good things for humanity and wildlife. As those glaciers melt in the summer, they basically drain their water down through little rivulets and trout streams, and the little trout streams become big trout streams, and the big trout streams become rivers. You can see the whole thing from glacier to big river, and actually it goes into the ocean from there, and it makes a clean estuary. Look how clear that water is. That's the Rio Blanco, the White River in something like south central Chile. And so it's good for wildlife. I'm a big fan of hummingbirds, and this is the greenback fire-crowned hummingbird. That's the front. We're going to just do some wildlife here for a few minutes, and we'll get back to culture. And that's the back. And if you wonder why it's called fire crown, if it's a male like this one was, and it's looking right at you and the sun's just right, you get that glint in the forehead, which evidently drives the females wild. I call this the Elvis bird because of the way that hair is always like that in all those, just like Elvis, back and way up high, another real attraction. And this is oh, by the way, that last one, I'm almost embarrassed to say what it is. It's a tufted tit tyrant. But that just, I can't help it. That's what it is. Okay, so, and they're like flycatchers here. That's a Patagonian Sierra finch. And here's another one. And this is a white-crested Elenia. I'm just going to go through these just to give you an idea of something different that exists down there. Rufous-tailed plant cutter, male. And there's the female. This is a fire-eyed toucan, very easy to see. Here I caught both eyes in this one picture. The slender-beaked parrot, somewhat rare, and that looks lonely there, but they're never alone. If you spread this picture out, you see all the critters around it. They're constantly squawking and playing, and they're fun to watch. This one is really rare. This is the burrowing parrot, and they are the craziest flyers. He's coming in looking right now at Mary, who's to my left as I take this picture. He's going to land on that thing at 30 miles an hour, that twig. And he's squawking, not even looking. They're the craziest flyers and really caught our attention. They were so much fun. At one point, there was only 200 left because people were taking them and putting them in cages all over the world. And they are now protected. So here he is. They're so curious at humans. Look how he's looking at me, And now he's looking at Mary. And I don't know if that's a male or not, really. That's flying. This is a blue-black grassquit male. He's all puffed up like a politician. And it was the mating season. And here's this female was checking him out. This was all in one spot. This is a rare one, endangered, the Chilean pigeon, which is simple. And it's huge, and that's its problem. It's meaty and large, and wherever you've got some people that don't have enough protein, those birds are in trouble. We only saw one while we were there, but luckily I was able to catch a picture. A beautiful bird. This is a brown-hooded gull. I like the fine feathers on the face. They're just amazing. I don't know if you can see that or not. Yeah, I guess you can. And they're very social squawkers as well. This is a whimbrel cleaning up the beach after the tide goes out. These are Magellanic penguins. There's two kinds of penguins there. I don't have a picture of the other kind, but they're fun to watch. And because this goes all the way to the South Pole, Chile does, basically. So you've got, hot deserts towards the top near the equator, and then you've got the South Pole. Did I say North Pole? It's the South Pole. This is a brown pelican. They were endangered for a while, but not so much anymore because nations figured it out. That's a brown pelican too. This is a Peruvian pelican, blue face, larger, a little more contrast. I'm not an expert on birds, but I read up on this so I didn't seem too stupid. These are black skimmers. These are really interesting. They plow with their beaks. Maybe you've seen them. The lower beak is much longer than the upper beak, and they just go through the water until they hit a minnow, and then they snap it. There's one doing it. And there's two doing it. And this one really kills me. This is the great southern grebe. Look at those young ones. Look at the facial characteristics on those. Amazing markings. Here she was feeding one a fish. The other one didn't get one. They're divers. They don't fly hardly at all. But they dive way down and grab a fish and feed it to their young. And the other one didn't get any. So I thought, well, that's not fair, is it? And fairness is big, But then the next time she caught one, this one, look at the wake it created getting over to mom. And it got a bigger fish. So there was a little bit of fairness there. This is the black-necked swan, which is protected, not too rare, but protected. You could see this a lot better if we could turn the lights off, but we can't do that in this room. This is a black-faced ibis. This is a juvenile black-faced ibis. Got to go fast. Southern lapwing. They're aggressive birds. See those horns on their wings? Maybe you can see them, maybe you can't. And they will peck you on the head. But we we got a little too close, and they did not peck us on the head. This is a female variable hawk in the desert. This is a turkey vulture. They look wicked, but they don't attack you. They're just the cleanup crew. And this one landed on a porch of our cabin somewhere. I think probably someone had been feeding it. But they're distinguished looking, I think, actually. This is, anybody guess? Condor. Yeah, very rare. And we actually saw a lot of them, but they're mostly, a mile away. They're so big. They're the biggest flying bird around, and up to 15 feet across. So you can see them even if they're a long ways away. This is the best picture I could get until I snuck up on this one. And he held real still because he's in a museum. That is a face I think only a mother could love, and she might be jiving too. This is a river otter. Looks just like the ones I live on Gold River. It looks just like the ones we have, but they've been trapped there, and so they are now on the endangered list. Trappers have trapped them out. It was eating crabs. It was making a lot of crunch, crunch noises. Mary spotted this one. My wife Mary went with me, and she's taken some of these pictures and is the best spotter ever. I used to think I was great at it. It crunch up these crabs. Now, it's got shells. It'd be like eating broken glass. So it crunches it up like this, and then somehow traps the meat in its teeth and lets the shells go down to the bottom of the ocean. And that's a little young one that's coming up to mom there. You can see the crab claws now if you look carefully. You see them? So we kind of decided it was crab. And here's looking like it's holding a corn of cob, but cob of corn, I think, actually. This is an Andean fox. It looks a little like a coyote, and it was bigger than our foxes. We only saw one, but luckily we got a picture of him up in the desert in the north. And this is a sea lion. If they're jumping, they're healthy and happy. If they're healthy and happy, I'm happy. And I took all these pictures, and it's just, I've got hundreds of them. That's the wildlife situation. No wonder Darwin went down there. This is another really endangered one. That's why I'm showing them. It's a poodoo. It looks like a deer, buffalo cross or something. They're stout and very rare. In fact, some of the Chileans that I showed this to said, boy, that was a gift because they are not seeing them. They're being hit by cars. They're about like our deer that way. And it's out there. This is an estuary, so they got fresh water and salt water mixed. It's not too salty to drink, and they can eat that algae, and that algae is fantastic for them. It's probably for us too. And it wasn't there long, and it goes right back into the deep woods. Didn't know I was there, or it would not have come out. Very shy. These are Darwin's berries, named after Darwin. They were about the size of a small grape. They were beautiful. We wanted to eat them, but we didn't know them, well enough. And nothing else had seemed to have eaten them. I think it's because they weren't ripe. We found out later they're edible. I wish we had tried them. We did eat a lot of these plums. They're in December and January, which is their summer. They line the highways, and you can just stop and pick and eat all the plums you want, and you will never get constipated if you do that. We ate hundreds. We're still trying to gain our weight back. All right. Okay, so much for that. Thanks for your patience. This is a cultural presentation, but the wildlife are alive because of culture or not. So it is, I'm saying that's a connection. Okay, so these are 10 feet tall, great big statues that were erected at the graves of religious and political leaders of the Mapuche tribe. The Mapuche are still today the greatest intact cultural Indian, Amerindian group in Chile. They were related to the Inca, but they wouldn't let the Inca take them over. The Inca were amazing, and they spread a lot, but the Mapuche said, no, we're fine. We'll just stay to ourselves. Now, you might notice that some of these are females, at least by my calculations, looking at the breasts. And so I read up about this, and their religion, and this is true in lots of places in southern South America, is that they have female spirits, It's nothing at all like Christianity, where it's the guy in the sky with no mother or sister or daughter or wife. Women are represented there in their religious ideation. And this is in a museum in Santiago, an amazing place to go. The women also were the only ones allowed to play the drum, or so I've read. You never know, you never know. You read one source and you could be wrong. But what I read was that they're the only ones allowed to play the drum and the only ones to dress up for the ceremonies. So there was not just the ideational spiritual stuff, there was the power sharing with women. And so here's, and you don't see too many pictures because right from the beginning, things got bad for them in terms of when the Spanish came. But they were there 20,000 years ago in South America. It took them a little longer to get to Chile, about 18,000 years ago. Let's stick with 20,000 because it's a nice round number. That is 200 centuries ago. And if you were, like me, taught in school that Columbus discovered America, he's 5 centuries ago. They were 200 centuries ago. There's a difference. You got to watch out. Culture, and it's not just our culture, that we get indoctrinated to a lot of stuff. And you have to think your way out. My teachers were indoctrinated into it too. They didn't know any better. And also, we tend to restrict things that don't shine a good light on us. They were an advanced group. They were mining silver. They were mining gold. When they found out how the Spanish were crazy after gold, they collapsed their mines so that the Spanish wouldn't be interested in them. And they also outlawed gold, but they kept on working with silver. They were great ceramicists, and they were great weavers, and still are. They're making some of their money these days on silver. Come on in, sit down. And this is a cap, and I wish I knew all the symbolism on it. As an anthropologist, that'd be fun to go down and do that. Anybody know what that is? I don't blame you if you don't know. I didn't either. It's a quipu, and this is a hard drive for the Amerindians. They keep all their accounts in the bands and tribes and individuals all on this, and you can always keep extending it. And this was hundreds of years ago. Not too bad for keeping, and they would put it in the care of someone they trusted. That's all the time I've given you. They were highly advanced and got along pretty well. There was skirmishes and wars even between Indians, but they were minor and they didn't last forever. It would be interesting to see how they would have evolved. They were pretty, they were way ahead of us on the movement of the stars and the sun, and they, these people were cultivators too. Well, I just have to say, this is a college, and I'm going to tell you the truth, and you probably can guess what happened when the Spanish got there. It's a terrifying history. For 300 or 400 years, basically, it was a story of genocide and slavery. They tried to enslave the Indians. A lot of them could run off because they know the territory, where blacks couldn't. So they also brought some blacks over across Argentina, marched them over the Andes into the mines, but there were fewer of them. The story of the Indians is really terrible because they kept them enslaved, and they kept them enslaved until 1970. It wasn't slavery like we own you. It's but you were intimidated or you were in debt to the owners, or because they loaned you some stuff and then charged you interest, and then you couldn't leave. And so that continued a long time. The Mapuche fought. The Inca. After Atahualpa was captured by Pizarro, they sort of, they got our leader and gave it up. That's a little short story, but the fact is that the Mapuche fought and they won a bunch of battles without guns. They were just really smart. They do a surprise attack. And they had to because they were being enslaved, and their women were being sexually assaulted constantly, and their kids taken away, and every imaginable outrage, for 300 years. And it got worse in Chile because it was only in the last years of the 1800s that they finally decided, well, let's kill them all. I'm sorry to say, and I wish it weren't true, It was called pacification. Basically, they got them down to 1% of their pre-Spanish conquest population number, from 500,000 down to a few thousand. So it was pretty awful. And of course, the Spanish made a lot of money off slavery. Blacks and especially Indians, 'cause not all the Indians could hide. And after a while, they become dependent on the mine owners and the plantation owners, just as blacks in the United States did. And so they built their offices, their government offices, bridges and roads with the money from slavery, and their churches too. And if you're thinking, you know, this is kind of unpleasant hearing about people that believe in Christ and are European and white, and we've heard a lot of that stuff lately. And if you're looking for a hero, well, of course there are some. Just as in America when the Underground Railroad was operating, there were whites. We don't know their names, but they were so heroic, taking chances on their lives and their families' lives to hide blacks in their barns so that they could get to freedom. Heroic white people. And this guy was sort of like that. Now, he was an Irishman, of all things. He came over to fight the Spanish. I don't know what he had against the Spanish, but he became such a good general that he ended up getting the glory of having marched out the Spanish out of Chile. And he was wounded in battle, so he was a big war hero. And they said, why don't you be our first president? He said, okay. And so he became president. Everybody goes, yeah, great. And he says, hey, I got an idea. Let's have a democracy and end slavery. Now, the people that were there, the Spanish are gone, but the people that were there were like our founding fathers. They were, doing all right, and they could take over these plantations and become gazillionaires. And but to make a long story short, they chased him out of the country. He died in Peru. It wasn't enough. People spoke out. One of the lessons from Chile is speak out. When it's time to speak out, speak out. Bernard O'Higgins, a cool guy. Catholic, Christian. So, okay, so this story is so bad, and we'll move on. But it got better when this man came along. His name was Salvador Allende. He was a doctor, tired of seeing kids dying of malnutrition, and wanted to end slavery. It was 1970. He was running for the second time as president. Nobody thought he'd win. He didn't have the money and the power. It was a Democratic vote, though, and he won. That was a big surprise for everybody. And he says, okay, here, what we're going to do, we're going to end slavery. And we're going to take the mines over because they are slave operations, and we will run them publicly. That's socialism, yep. And we will have safety features in there. They're going to get a minimum wage. Everybody's going to get basic health care. We can't afford, Mayo Clinic, but we're going to give people basic health care. And we're going to make sure kids are educated to high school. Basically, he's trying to bring Chile into the 20th century. And he was popular. Right away, of course, it was the same thing as O'Higgins. The rich said, no, we're not going to be taxed for these other people. And they cast aspersions on the other people. They're just lazy and all that stuff. And we're not going to don't tax us. And, they need to get a job and the usual stuff. And they had some help from Richard Nixon. And Nixon, and with the CIA, under his command, did everything they could for, all kinds of dirty tricks on them. They manipulated the copper prices. Chile's mines couldn't operate. They brought in a lot of money for a trucker strike, which shut the country down. Inflation went to 100%. And it did hurt Salvador Allende's popularity, but not as much as you think, because he was on the radio explaining what they're doing. And the people said, yeah, let's hold on. So he continued through he came in 70, 71, 72, 73. And by then, it was apparent that he wasn't going to leave, and the people were going to hold out for him. The only way to stop him then was a military coup. And so they arranged with this guy, Augusto Pinochet, that he would take over and run the country and give the mines back to the stockholders and forget about the schools and keep the Indians oppressed. And he did it. Now, basically, this was the old battle our fear of socialism or communism, and they thought, well, Allende, public education, that is socialism because it is the public ownership of the means of production. You are practicing socialists right now. If you went to public schools, you ran on public highways, you've got the firemen and the policemen, they're all public, right? And you're better off for it. Or we wouldn't be here today if we didn't have some of these institutions. Otherwise, you go to Carleton College for $50,000 a semester. I can only speak in 50-minute intervals, so I was teaching too long. Okay, so, well, he was horrible. He began to capture all the Allende supporters, and they just disappeared. No one knows, well, no one on Allende's side knows where they went, but we know that they're gone, and gone forever. Oh, in the ocean or mass graves, they're gone. A lot of them were students, and if you go to Chile and Santiago, there's a human rights museum where you can go in. It's as big as a football field, 4 stories high, and you've got the pictures of all the disappeared people the families sent in for all the kids that were lost when he was killing people. He was torturing people. I can't even begin to tell you, would take the whole presentation, it still wouldn't do it justice, what that guy did. And what bothers me the most is that we participated in it. Not you and me, we got nothing to be ashamed of. But our government did this. Another lesson from Chile, know what your leaders are doing. Pay attention. Of course, Allende didn't want any more talk about slavery, because we're going to go back to it. So he had the book burning thing going on big time and fired the professors, took over the colleges, took over the media, so that, his point of view was all there was going to be. There's some of the books, classic books in Chile that he banned or burned. He even decided to refit his army with Nazi uniforms. That's a Nazi helmet. It would have something different on it because it's Chile, I suppose, but he was a full-on fascist. We don't have time to read this because I'm running off at the mouth here too much. But the fact is, I'm going to go on. He basically did everything he could to destroy the Indian culture. Indians can't speak their language. They can't have their celebrations. On and on and on. And, and for 17 years he stayed in power through Nixon, Ford, Carter, and Reagan. Carter was the only Democrat in there. He could have done more, but at least he called Pinochet out once. And that was about it, though. And he didn't stop anything. And Reagan, just kept on going. Now, at some point, the mothers of the disappeared said, okay, nobody's protesting because everyone's afraid to now. The military will kill you. You'll disappear. And they said, well, let's get together and have one great big demonstration. They won't be able to kill us all. And we'll get the public press in there. We'll get the global press in there. And we'll march and take a chance. And we're going to do this in honor of our kids that are missing. And they did, and they got away with it. By then, the banks had failed. The capitalist banks had failed under Pinochet. He wasn't as popular. And then they began to print things about all the people that disappeared. And then the Indians, what's left of the Mapuche, found their voices and began to speak out about the terrible things that happened to them. And the students, even though they were in the laundered colleges, they knew, their parents told them what had happened, and they started going to the torture chambers. I've been to this one. It's not a torture chamber anymore, but it's a museum. And they, with the press in tow, they said, that's where they're torturing people. And, really, the jig was up for Pinochet. Took a lot of courage to do this. And right through it, here's 76, 3 years into this terrible stuff, Henry Kissinger, our Secretary of State, is shaking the hand of Pinochet. We were in league with this guy. And so that has left a terrible legacy about the United States. We've done a lot of good things, and we should be proud of being American. But this is one that we messed up on really bad. And so you go to the museum, and they've got Made in USA on that. This is part of the art project now that artists and singers and others are doing. It's been 50 years, and they're still upset about what we did down there. Since Republicans played the biggest role, they turned the Republican elephant, their iconic image, into a tank here and put a Nazi cross there on it. So it's, they're pissed. And it's not just in museums. Mary and I were walking through Santiago, and we saw this mural on the side. That's a sidewalk down there at the bottom. And it's of a protest singer, a woman who sang against Pinochet and was shot in the head, the American flag on her forehead. That's not the kind of thing I want to see, and I know it's not the kind of thing you want to see. But once in a while, knowledge is uncomfortable. But happy ending coming up here, all right? It's about time. In 1990, Pinochet finally left because of a vote. But before he left, what did he do? He basically gave himself immunity from prosecution, and all the killers. So not a single one of them went to jail, and neither did Nixon, even though Nixon also had to resign for cheating on his taxes, and his vice president was cheating on his taxes, had to resign too, and none of them did a day in jail. Okay, so this is the celebration. It says, goodbye, General. The happiness is already in progress. Good news, the prison that held all these, so many of the protesters, they were all turned loose. This is after they opened the doors and let them out. And now the Chileans, modern Chileans, are holding dance classes in there, and kids are learning to paint in there. And it's a modern Chile now that has overcome Pinochet through a lot of courage. I think one of the lessons, of this is that you don't let a democracy collapse in a coup. Maybe a dictatorship, maybe a coup's a good idea, but a democracy, even a bad one, is better than a Pinochet. So now the modern Chilenos, they've got a lot of what Allende, they brought back the Allende reforms. They've got basic health care. They've got public education. They're doing better than most of the nations in South America. That's why I say happy ending, right? They could do better, but it's so much better. And the people are generally peaceful and happy. People that are not desperate, who have health care and things like that, are less likely to be problematic citizens. And so that's what you get if you take care of people. And this guy was a boat builder, building a boat in his backyard. They need a lot of boats and a lot of fishing going on. Boat repairs down there. Serious cattle farmers down there, ranchers down there. This is not the rodeo. I'm going to show you some rodeo in a minute, but this is what they're imitating. The need to stop, cattle to give them their shots, or to brand them, or castrate them, or some other terrible thing that we do to cattle. And so they've got this. They're controlling this bull here. And Mary was showing pictures of her horse. They love horses down there. You see the iconic hat, Chilean hat. They're called huasos, the cowboys down there. And they're very friendly. It's a safe place. You can go down there and not worry about getting mugged, And so this is a chef who was digging for clams. Mary was watching her, and I took pictures of these women that were out digging clams for the restaurant that night. And part of their ceremony is a little shot of wine when you're done. So here's the clam digging crew. Friendly people, just invited us along and put up with us and gave us wine. Can't be too bad. Beekeepers, a lot of them, because Chile is not so full of pesticides like some places are. So we got a lot of beekeepers. You got a lot of teachers. We met her in a coffee shop and her kid, and helped her going up down the steep. There's a lot of inclines in cities around here. Helped her with her kid. And then there's farmers, but not so many small farmers anymore. It's going, kind of corporate. But they are producing a lot of food, you got to say. Notice these dry hills. That's desert. How is that green in the bottom? It's irrigation. It's the glaciers. The summer drip from the glaciers keep this place a really big producing country. And a lot of stuff at Costco, the avocados and stuff like that, that's from Chile. And you can see what happens without irrigation. This is not getting irrigation. This is. There's a difference, right? And so it'd all be desert, the northern third of Chile, if it did not have irrigation. Although, desert's its own cool thing. But if you want to feed 8 billion people on the planet, a little irrigation, especially if it's coming down free with no energy costs, let gravity feed. Okay, so these are grapes, and those vines are up about this high in the air so that the grapes hang down, and you can just go cut them and put them in boxes. I got under there to take a look at what that was. I've never seen anything like it. It's so beautiful. Food just hanging in front of you. They were not ripe either, so I didn't pick any. Otherwise, I would have probably molested at least one batch there. If you're going to travel there, you can go with a tent. A lot of students from other countries do that. In America, we seem to want to go to Cancun and get drunk. That's true, actually. And from what I've seen, traveled a lot of countries, and I highly recommend, if you've got the courage to get out there, Chile's a good place to go. It's kind of expensive to get there, but otherwise, if you're camping with a tent, walking along the road, hitchhiking is safe there. People doing it all the time. That hotel is $20 a night. It's funky, and it'd be a lot of fun to stay there. We didn't. The food is kind of like American food. I would call it a little bland. Take your hot sauce, but the fruit juices are amazing. I mean, nothing's fresher than their fruit. And the one on the right is a cactus bud, which was delicious. You get these fruit drinks. Beer's good. I'm just going to go on. If you're going to drive, you can go by bus. But if you're going to drive, like we did, you're going to have to go on these things because you can't get highways through some parts of Chile. It's just like this, and so it's just not worth it to try to pave it. And so you go around, and it's cheap. It's cheap and safe, and they just go around and drop you off places where there are a few roads, and then they drop you off to another place where they've got room for a few more roads. And this is a volcano. You can see it's puffing a little bit. It's like a hot fudge sundae. It's got glaciers on it, and it's still hot enough and active enough. It's puffing out the top. But those glaciers are not just for irrigation. They're also for recreation, and tourism is a big deal in Chile. They're making a lot of money off of it. Another lesson from Chile, take care of your resources because people will come and drop money in your country. We used to have more of a tourist economy than we have here now. We've done too much cutting and not paying attention, I think, in Minnesota to the importance of tourism, where you can showcase your resources, keep them together, and make money off of them in a great way. Okay, so here's a kayaker and a rafter. I'm going to show you one little rundown. I got to go quick. I was on a bridge. They're about to hit a wall of water, and they're going to go clear under. The boat's completely full, but that raft, they've done it before. It works. It costs $30 to take this tour per person. And I ran to the other side of the bridge and waved at them. They waved back at me. Okay, so they lived. Okay, the rodeo, real quick. We're doing okay on time, I think. The rodeo, it's the iconic thing. Soccer is probably at least as popular as rodeo, but soccer is everywhere. Rodeo isn't, and it's the iconic, at least I think, I'm claiming it's the iconic sport. And of course, Mary wanted to go to it, so we're going, right? And this is our cook at a restaurant said, yeah, I'm going to go to the rodeo tomorrow. And we said, we've been trying to find one. Where's it going to be? And they said, at Las Breas, which is to hell and gone from where we were. But it's the only one we had a chance to go to, so we did go. And what a gorgeous place. Great big mountains all around. The wide-angle lens doesn't do them justice, believe me. And it was about 150 people, all Chilenos, and there wasn't a tourist except Mary and I. And so we really got a taste of something really Chileno here. And it was great. It was really cool to see. I highly recommend you get to a rodeo in the Andes if you're going to go down there. Their rodeo is different than ours. Instead of bull riding and stuff like that, they're much more humane, actually, than we are. This guy lets a young bull, not a big one, but a young bull out, not a little one either, to run around the arena, and then a team of horses goes out there and tries to pin him so that they can do all those terrible things that I was mentioning before. It's kind of like an imitation of what's life on the ranch, and they've turned it into a sport. He lets it out, and here they pinned it too early. They're supposed to do it against this white bag here because it's full of air and it won't hurt the bull. We haven't done that, I think, in our rodeos. But they pinned it too early, and so they smashed it up against the plywood. See, the horse is even exhaling from hitting that thing pretty hard. But that's So they didn't get points, but these people did it just perfectly. I got a million of these, but this is a perfect pin. With that foot, they can't move, and it's not hurt, and they got a 90-degree angle so that bull can't kick him and break the leg of the horse, because those bulls are powerful. And so it's a technique and it's fun to watch. Most of the bulls find a way to get out of it, like this one did, and this one. A lot of stuff happens really fast, and I had a good seat in the stands. This one almost jumped on me. It was right in front of me. It decided, I'm leaving this arena, and went up and had both feet over the top and looking me right in the face, like, what do you want, But he was already on the way down by the time I took the picture. But he almost made it out of the arena. This little girl was right next to me at that time, and she did not care for that situation. Okay, speaking of girls, this has been a macho sport all along. We happened to get there at the change where women now are beginning to want to get in this. It would be like women running out on the NFL football field. You know what I mean? Has that happened yet? I don't think so. It's happened here at the high school. I'm not going to say who did it, but somebody did that at the high school, and fine with me at least. But I don't know how the Chileans feel about it. But this little girl, I shouldn't say, I don't know what she is, 14, something like that. But she ran as a team with her dad or grandpa, and boy, she was doing really good. Look at the hair flying off that horse, and here she pinned one, and so she. I don't think she won, but she placed. And look at all these guys in the background watching this. Like, women are taking over here. And this was our cook that told us about it. Here is his picture now riding. He'll be on the left in this next picture. Cook during the day, on the weekends he rides rodeo. Anyway, now Mary, I bought that hat for her, and it's questionable whether or not she should be wearing it, because she's not Chilean, she's not a Wasa, technically, and we're at a place where everybody knew we were the only tourists there, and she's wearing their iconic hat. And I said, Mary, that might be a little pretentious. And she said, shut up, or something like that. And they did give her a couple of funny looks, but then that was pretty clever. This is the winners of the rodeo, the family. And they said, well, why don't you get on that horse? They want to see her ride. And Mary's a badass on a horse. She is. And she jumped on there, and, they said, okay, come for lunch. They didn't ask me. But anyway, so there she is on the winning horse. This is just a pose shot. Doesn't have her foot in the stirrup, but she knows what she's doing. Okay, so all the good stuff. I got to take a little dip down now. This is a roller coaster ride. The challenges. They're facing the same challenges we are in some ways, and that is climate change. I don't want to get controversial about it, but I mean, the National Academy of Sciences, NASA, and NOAA, they all agree. It's human caused. We're in trouble. We need to stop putting so much carbon out, right? And in Chile, the glaciers are melting faster there than anywhere in the world. And they are very concerned. This is their ace in the hole. They don't want to lose it. And so they are really creeped out because they're starting to see droughts and things like that they've never seen before. Heat that they can't take. This water is needed for not just the wildlife, but for everything, right? Drinking water and food production. They've got canals that run that down without any energy use. And it's working great as long as there's glaciers. They can water their grapes. They can produce all kinds of food for the whole world because they produce way more than they're eating. Now it got another problem. It's just getting hotter, and so now they're starting to cover their crops with nylon. That's expensive, creates a lot of trash. It's a lot of effort, but they're having to do it because their crops are getting scorched. It matters, folks. And one thing I think that they're doing wrong, and they haven't asked me, but I think they're cutting too much. I think we've been cutting too much here too. The idea that wood is a renewable resource, that forest products that's not true. Look at the studies and see how much nutrient is taken off every time you clear cut. So yes, trees will come back, but they're going to come back a little less vigorous and more vulnerable to disease. Plus, look at all these trucks out on the highway. They're everywhere in Chile. They're taking their forests off. And you bare the soil like this, you're gonna raise the ambient temperature in an area. That means that you lose some humidity storage, and you start getting forest fires. And while we were there, they were in the middle of the drought, and there were forest fires everywhere. We were dodging them, and it's freaking them out. They've never had anything like this. And so they've got firefighters for cities, but they weren't set up for, there was always so much rain that was never a problem, but it is now. Another thing that's a concern, we're going to address the solution to that in a second. Another thing that's a concern is salmon farming. Salmon's good for you. I like the taste. I don't know about you, but those are nets. Those lines are nets, and salmon are crowded in there really tight. And they go through there and throw some dog food out for them to eat, stuff that they don't normally eat. And then they get sick because they're crowded together. They're not eating their normal diet, and then they have to put antibiotics in the water. Costco had to reject some of their salmon because it's so full of antibiotics. It doesn't even taste right. I had a farm salmon down there, and I thought, come on, is this really salmon? But of course it was farm salmon. We should eat something else. And by the way, all their poop goes down there and changes the whole ecology of the lake. They're not supposed to, or not lake, that's ocean. That area, those little inlets, suddenly have an enormous amount of nutrient in them on the bottom of the lake. That's not natural, and it's God knows what it's going to be like in 10 or 20 years. The other thing I'm worried about in Chile is the Mapuche. They are doing so much better, but there's still a lot of discrimination, right? This is on the beach. I tried not to get in their face because I didn't want them to feel like they were animals in a zoo or something that I'm taking a picture of just to be be a common tourist. But I wanted you to look at them because you can only care about, fully people that you can see. It helps at any rate. And these kids need all the help they can get. You would think that they would be highly revered because it seems like it. All over Chile, there are monuments to the Mapuche in restaurants and all over the place. Their art is highly respected, gorgeous wood carvings, blowing your mind. But it seems to me like the real dominant thinking is this Pedro Valdivia statue. He's still in the town square, the biggest Indian killer in Chilean history. And why would you even have that up there anymore? But it's just like Columbus. We've got counties and cities named after him, Valdivia's cities and counties and all that stuff. And even if that statue doesn't represent what Chileans think, when I take a look at the actions of their caballeros, which are their national police, they don't have local police as far as I know, they have been famous for harassing Indians, especially if they protest on anything. Here's a beach, Villarrica Beach, which is a very famous beach. And these folks here are the traditional Chilenos, non-Indian, and the Mapuche sit over here. They self-segregate. You can say, well, they could sit down there, and that's true, they could sit down there. But there's a reason they're not sitting down there with everybody else. Something's happening, and I think it's, discrimination. I think they're feeling it. And so, I'm concerned that they're not, it just is in our nation in some cases. You're not integrating as well and not as welcome, even though that's their land, and it was for 200 centuries. So we went to a Mapuche settlement. Nobody goes there because it's not touristy, and it's the only place you go to just see what's happening. But that's what a sociologist or anthropologist does. And it's called the Booty Lake. It's not even a reservation, but it's a community that's so Mapuche that nobody else goes there except Mapuche and a few others. And so this is the lake, Booty Lake, which is still, but it drains into that ocean, the Pacific Ocean, which is very hard to swim in, very terrifying place to try to swim. But this is the Booty, they swim there, and we did go out there and just to see what would happen, and they just didn't look at us. We got the feeling that they probably get when they go to Villarrica. the idea is, okay, we're not going to say anything, but what are you doing here? And that's a subjective judgment on what happened there. But I get it, you know. So, and I didn't get close to them either. This was with a telephoto lens, just to kind of get an idea of the Mapuche. Mary did go out and talk to a couple of Mapuche people on the Pacific side there, which is not so totally Mapuche. And they were pleasant and friendly, but they didn't carry a conversation on any longer than they had to. We got the feeling that they'd given up on the larger society. I got lucky. We went onto an island that's totally Mapuche in the middle of Lake Booty. It was a great big lake. That's Lake Booty there, which means salt in Mapuche because the ocean gets into it in places. And I ran into an elder, and he seemed to want to talk, and probably because I'm an old guy like him. And so we had a good conversation. He told me how things were going. He said the women are still this is not my picture, this one, doing a lot of weaving. The men are engaged in agriculture. They don't have the money for engines. They don't have running water or electricity in a lot of cases. But they're living with oxen and still healthy. They know how to live off the land still after all these years. They've kept their culture intact. I ran into this fisherman. And I addressed him in Spanish. My Spanish isn't great, but he could have understood me. I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but he would only speak Mapuche to me. But at least that's an indication. Sociologists know that if you got your language together, then you've got your culture together, at least somewhat, because all the meanings and biases of a culture are embedded in the language, just like we called our people pioneers and settlers and happy things, where the Indians may have said, well, they're invaders and killers. You know, it's embedded in our language. You don't even think about it. And so he was still able to speak Mapuche. I'm glad for that. And he seemed real healthy. So they're doing all right. They may take over this planet if we can't use power anymore. They're the ones we're going to have to ask questions of. But right now, I think they're feeling pretty alone. That's what I thought this picture was just right for that. He's by himself on that big beach in a place where he feels safe. Nevertheless, they are doing better, and we can celebrate that. There's a lot to celebrate in Chile. They are really starting to work on sexual assaults of women, not just Mapuche, all women, which has been a problem there. They are putting up windjammers like crazy, and they're so popular that people are coming to see them, and they had to put in parking lots because the Chileans just want to stand there and look at this. Here's our hope. Here's our hope. So they are also protecting their endangered wildlife, and they've got a Smokey the Bear gig going on. They have eco lodges popping up everywhere. We went to this one, stayed there. They had a community solar shower and solar heaters for all the hot water, and no air conditioning, but you can get in a hammock. And they even had a friendly gypsy circus come in. I know the term gypsy, it doesn't sit well with some people. You're supposed to use the term Roma. But you know what? I'm tired of having gypsies tell me, no, that we're gypsies. We're not Roma. You know, it's not a universal term. So we're calling them gypsies, and they're proud of it. And so they brought this gypsy circus, and gypsies tend to be somewhat nomadic and artistic and musical and interesting. They started the circus at midnight. And their kids and a lot of other kids are out there absolutely crazy and having a good time. So it's okay, I guess. They also had a big influence on Valparaiso, which is a UNESCO World Heritage City because of all the art, the murals that you see all through there, what they do to steps. And here I am. Mary shot this one, me on the piano steps. And this is an amazing thing on just a retaining wall. A lot of retaining walls because it's on a mountain. It's an artist colony, and it's a wonderful place. You don't need a dime to be happy there because you just go around and look at the art. I'm in that one. But and it wasn't just gypsies that did this, other artists too. But at any rate, it's a wonderful place to be, and the gypsies are sort of integrating pretty well into this society. And in terms of that term gypsies, I'm going to hit the music now here in a second. And so Brett, not yet. I'll tell you when, buddy. Let's see. Maybe I don't have to do that. Let's see if I can do this. Oh, the techno gods are with us. Okay, hit it, Brett. This is called Sand in the Wind, the Gypsy Kings. Turn it up. Way up. All pictures we took in Chile. Thanks for coming. If you want to do a question and answer period, we can do that if you want. Otherwise, don't feel bad about getting up. I know some of you are probably late to class.
Well, let's give it up for Gary, everyone. For those of you that are willing and able to stick around and ask some questions, now's the time. Priority goes to students. Student questions. Come on, y'all. Some of you came from a long ways away. Huh? What is up with that? No student questions? How about y'all? You got any questions? There we go. We can do it closely.
What was your favorite food that you ate over there?
Favorite food?
Yes.
They do a mean roast chicken. That's a big deal for them.
Okay, that's question number one. Question number two, right here. Yes, sir. What you got?
And it is a student question. Are the minerals still publicly developed?
The minerals?
Yeah.
It's a good question. My understanding is that they are still operating one mine publicly, but most of the mines have gone back to stockholders, I assume. However, they now have safety standards and minimum wage, so it's not going to be just pure slavery anymore. You know, most of the world economies are a mix of capitalism and socialism. You know, right now we're practicing socialism, and a lot of us are doing things in capitalism too. It's a nice mix, so.
So one thing that I noticed particularly in some of the last few images is that a few people were holding up what we would consider the peace sign, index and middle finger. I was just wondering, does that have the same sort of context in Chile that it does here? Or is it like a different symbolism?
That's another great question, and I've seen this in other countries too, and they often do it this way instead of this way. As a recovering hippie, I always did it this way. And Nixon, when he wanted to destroy the hippies, he started doing this, and then we said, hey, let's forget the peace sign. But at any rate, I think it has changed a little bit. I think it means friendship as much as anything, and maybe peace flows from it.
Thank you for, is this on?
I think so.
I don't know if you can hear me, but
I can.
thank you for the presentation. I was in Chile in November, and some of the demonstrations in Santiago had to do with the new constitution or trying to get the new constitution.
Yeah.
Did anyone bring that up during your travels?
Well, there's been a lot of turmoil there, political, but it's not like the old days, I mean, it's kind of like us. We're just constantly, battling out on all these issues. The poor and middle class want more, and just like in this country, the rich in Chile are getting richer, and the poor are not keeping up. And so, they've been protesting, and there's been some troubles, but it's not on a real high level at this point. I would say, at least when I was there, when we were there, January and December.
The youngest prime minister ever elected on earth is currently the prime minister of Chile. How is he being received?
I didn't hear much about him. It seems like, I really can't answer that.
Huh, okay.
Any other questions? Does Chile belong to the United Nations, Gary?
I'm sure it does. Yeah. It's a peaceful country trying to stay friends with everybody. They're selling a lot of that wood to China, though. A lot of that wood that's going out is going to China.
I'm just wondering where you began your journey, and so which airport you came into and where you left from, where you ended.
Okay, that's the most expensive thing about Chile is getting there, Chile. We found that going over to Fargo was cheaper than anything out of Minneapolis, and it's a lot easier to get through Fargo in every way. You can see every gate. There's only, I think, 7. And it was cheaper, so we will be going to Fargo from now on. And then, so you go there to Dallas, then to Santiago in their international airport there. I don't know if that is everything you asked?
On your way back?
Same thing, it was just reversed. It's a long flight, because you're going so far. It's 9 hours. It's a long time to sit still in a packed plane.
How far south did you travel in the country?
We got, I'll just put this, we definitely got the middle third, maybe the middle half of the country, north and south. We could have gone up to the desert all the way to the top, but as soon as you get into the desert, you got the feel for that, I thought. There's mines up there, lithium for car batteries and things like that. But the south, you can hardly travel. You know, I mean, it's so, there's few roads at some point. You need to go by boat, you know, and we did not do that.
What would be a major issue that you found there?
The major issue?
A major issue that you found there?
Major issue that you found there.
You mean like political issue or social issue or what?
Anyway.
I do think it was, I feel like the relationship with the Indians is big. And, but I guess maybe dwarfing that is the fear of losing their glaciers. Because the glaciers is everything to them. If without those glaciers, they would not be the same nation. They couldn't afford a lot of what they've got.
I was just going to ask, said their government is a mix like ours, like is it capitalism and socialism? Can they protest peacefully, or are they arrested, or
Okay.
how free are they? I mean,
Yeah. Well, the government is democratic, but when you talk about socialism and capitalism, those are economic forms.
Yes.
And they're like us, they're a mix. You know, they've got public schools, and there's some private schools. And yes, you can protest there, and if you're peaceful, you're pretty well off. However, some of the Indian groups think that it has not worked out for them to protest, that the Carboneros are a little too anxious to harass them and you know, take them away, to book them and just, you know, it's not terrible, but it could be better in terms of protesting.
Hey, Gary, has the United States owned its responsibility in supporting Pinochet?
Boy, I think that they're just not saying much about it. That's my feeling. I didn't know that much about Pinochet because when a lot of this was happening, I was in Vietnam. Actually, on an aircraft carrier out on the coast of Vietnam, basically, you know, doing what we did to Vietnam, which is killing 1.5 million people. I'm a big fan of veterans. They expect presidents to do the right thing and choose wars that make some sense. And that wasn't one of them. And I found out the hard way. I was raised by Republicans, and still am very conservative in many ways. And my brother and I were over there at the same time. He got shot, and is a mess today, and in many ways. And so that was going on in Chile. I don't know. I bet you probably 1% of Americans could write a single sentence about Pinochet. You know what I mean? So I think we're just letting it slide and hoping nobody notices. But they do notice. Wherever we go and do things like that, I mean, it's 50 years and they're still angry at what we did.
All right. Oh, here we go. Excellent.
We were there in January, and just on the topic of America and international, it seems like we did not. We've traveled elsewhere where you can get by with your English, and it's a lot harder to in Chile.
It is.
And it seems to me if America wants to have any influence in Chile, we'd be well served to all learn a lot more Spanish.
That's true. And not only that, they use different words. Did you catch on that avocado, which in most Spanish-speaking countries is called aguacate, but there it was palata? Palata, yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's, you know, and so they're saying, you want some palata? Well, probably not. I don't know what, and there's a lot of that. It's a long ways away from the U.S., and they're not going to compromise their language for.
Yet somehow the Chinese are becoming very influential in the country.
Did you see that too?
Well, I mean, for example, a lot of the vehicles are not, you know, they're brands that you showed a picture of a truck. I didn't recognize any of the brands. A lot of them are Indian or Chinese.
Yeah. The rental cars too, yeah. And there's nothing, you know, China has every right to be there, but they're really sucking up the lumber right now. And, and they're beginning to get a lot of influence in South America and Central America. Did you catch on the news, Honduras has decided to give up on us because they feel like we've cheated them. Our corporations have gone down there and taken their resources and not paid them anything. And so now they're siding with China on the issue of Taiwan. And I think you're going to see a lot of that going on. So really, we're liable to reap a harvest of corporate influences that most Americans know nothing about. I've traveled almost all the countries south of our border, and some of them several times, and the Caribbean too. And the U.S. has got a real problem with how people feel. They also respect us in other ways. American music, of all things, is the thing that they just love in just about any country. They just love our music. Mary and I went to Ethiopia and Somalia, and everyone's calling themselves Michael. Guess who are their... Michael Jackson, yeah. So, it's interesting what works, but I think you can do a lot more with what China's doing is give them a little subsidy. Here, put some roads in. Here, do this, do that. And it's a bribe in a sense, but it's better than just trying to control their government or assassinate their leaders. And the U.S. has Allende's dead. Pinochet thought, well, we surround the government buildings, they'll come out and give up, but they wouldn't. So they bombed those buildings with our weaponry, and Salvador Allende was talking into a microphone on the radio until moments before his death, when the Chilean army went in there, Pinochet's army went in there. They said he was already dead, that he'd shot himself in the head, and that may be true. No one knows for sure. One thing, so when they went in there and came out, he was a dead man. And I've got a picture of, it's too gruesome so I don't show it to everybody, but a picture of the bullet hole through his glasses. If you're going to shoot yourself in the head, not that there's any normal way to do it, but would you shoot through your glasses? You know what I mean? I don't know. But at any rate, so those kinds of assassinations, they're not going to forget it. I think the young folks they see it as past history. So we've got a chance to be friends with them. And all over the world, you meet those people with smiles, they'll meet you with smiles back. Our Christian guides did not want us to go into Somalia because they're Islamic. When we were in Ethiopia, we had to hire guides because there were no road signs. So that's one place we hired guides. Went over to Somalia, basically forced our guides to take us to Somalia. And we've been, what you've seen, Captain Phillips and Black Hawk Down. It makes the Somalis look like they just want to kill people. If you go over there with guns and try to take their nation over, yeah, they'll kill you, as we might do if someone did that to us. Go over there with smiles, they smile back. They were just, and our guides were charmed by the Somalis, as we were. People want to be friends, but. You can't try to control everybody, and we have kind of done a lot of that in Central and South America.
All right, probably the last question for the day. Okay, I'll take it. So more than 1 billion people depend on glacial meltwater for drinking water around the planet. How would you describe climate literacy in Chile? How familiar are Chileans with the climate crisis?
Well, the increasing loss of their glaciers has made them wake up. And and I'd say they're way ahead of us. Certainly in terms of wind power, I looked it up. I think they're using almost, I put it this way, of their energy use, wind power is double the percent that ours is, approximately double. So they're really they got a good deal. They're along the desert beach. Those winds come over and they're taking advantage of it.
Double in terms of installed capacity or percentage of the generation mix?
Yeah, double the latter. Mm-hmm.
I just came back from Chile too, and up in the desert, they have acres and acres.
Yeah, Yes, and they're doing solar too. And you can do wind up above and solar down below. You can have wind up above and graze cattle below, or have gardens, or whatever the heck you want to do. And it's not that bad looking. I mean, you know what it looks like to me? It looks like survival, those wind generators. And I wish the oil companies would get with it. If they want to control energy, it's okay with me as long as it doesn't kill us, you know. And so I think we're, you know, hopefully we can move in the right direction. We're way behind.
Are they those wind generators from China, probably, or there's a lot?
I don't know. The solar panels are most likely, Jay knows better than I. He's an expert on solar. Most of our solar stuff's Chinese, isn't it now?
Most solar cells are manufactured in China, yes.
Yeah.
Most, but not all.
Wind turbines, but probably come from Brentford, North Dakota. Well, I know they had
Yeah.
information to China, apparently.
There's a lot of wind manufacturing elsewhere in the world.
Yeah. And of course, we can't forget that conservation is better than any source of energy, because all you have to do is not use it. You know, insulation and driving smaller cars and things like that. And buses are really the answer. 8 billion people on this planet. When I was born, back in the 1800s, no, 1948 actually, I'm 74, there were 2.5 billion people on the planet. There's now 8 billion. In my lifetime, it's more than tripled, and I'm not dead yet, as far as I know. And you can't quadruple a population like this that's using the kind of energy that we're using. I think I'm already talking to the choir here, singing to the choir. But no, we really need to be in a dead run if there is time. You know, that's the question. I went to watch those wind towers, and Mary and I are looking at that thinking, man, I hope they put those up in time. But, you know, it's not up to Chile. If Chile did everything right and we don't, we're the biggest consumers per person. I hear politicians say, oh, well, China uses more energy than we do. That's true, but they got 4 times as many people. The way to do it fairly is it per person. And we're using more than anybody.
Canada's #1, US is #2.
Okay, you might know, but the last time I looked, it was us. Anyway, we're neck and neck. We're in Stupidville, for sure. Yeah. Did you?
Americans, you could just rest.
Yeah. But we could change, and America surprises people once in a while, and gets it going. So we'll see. We'll see. It's up to us. And it's usually.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around.
You bet.